Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to St. Arvans Meeting Rooms, venue for our meetings for many years, and we were unable to meet for the last 18 months here. So it's lovely to be back home, and I'd like to thank James, who has set up the remote session for us so that anyone who wishes to access remotely can do so. So, with no further ado, may I start the agenda for the annual meeting? Um, and I, at this point, pass over to the clerk who will give you the setup for chairing it.
Okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The procedure for this evening's meeting is that the outgoing chair of the last council, up until 5th May, will take this meeting forward through items 1 and 3, up until the election of the new chair. So I'll hand you back to Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, item 1, to record attendance and receive apologies for absence. Mary, I think you're aware, Clerk, you're aware of who was attending here?
Yes.
Councillors and members of the public?
3 members of the public.
Thank you. And has anyone any apologies for absence to present, or on behalf of anyone else, or have you had any passed on?
I haven't received any.
Fine, thank you. Then we'll move on to item 2. And this is to receive the notice of members elected at the Monmouthshire local elections held on the 5th of May 2022, and thereafter to sign declarations of office. We have circulated the elections. Perhaps you'd like to read that through for us, Clerk.
Okay.
So that's correctly recorded.
So the returning officer reported that the persons whose names below were duly elected as town councillors for the above area: Rita Edwards, Peter Farley, John Howells and Mike Sunderland.
Thank you very much, Clerk. So I can now actually officially welcome Councillors Farley, Howells and Sunderland to the meeting, now that you've been included in it. Item 3 is to elect Chair of the Council for the forthcoming year, which is 2022 to 23, and thereafter sign a declaration of office. Are there any nominations for the position of Chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Rita Edwards.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Farley. Well, that's very kind of you. Is there a seconder for this?
I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howells. Are there any further nominations to be had? Well, I'm delighted to be able to accept such a wonderful invitation and nomination to serve as your chair for the following year. Thank you so much.
Three people breathe huge sighs of relief.
Will I therefore ask you to sign the declaration?
Thank you. This does feel like signing my life away somewhere along it in public. It's actually on film now as well. I'm not too sure about some of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk. So at this stage, the new chair, who happens to be me, continues with the rest of the agenda. Next, item 4 is to elect Vice Chair of the Council for 2022 to 23, and thereafter sign the declaration of office. Are there any nominations for the post of Vice Chair, please?
Councillor Farley.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sutherland. Is there a seconder for this office?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howells. Councillor Farley, would you be agreeable to accepting those nominations?
Obviously comes as a complete surprise. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, as long as I don't have to go up and punch the person who nominated me, as they do in the Oscars. And I don't want to do that.
Well, it's very good of you to I do have to ask at this stage, thank you for agreeing to stand. Are there any other nominations? And nothing's been sent to you?
No,
Clerk?
I've not received anything.
So I'm delighted to confirm that Councillor Farley, you are the new Vice Chair of the current council.
Thank you, Chair.
Could I please
Can
ask
I
you to sign the
sign this?
declaration?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Now, next item on the agenda is to make arrangements for public notice of any vacancies for co-opted members. And our clerk will remind us that the election of councillors was uncontested because we didn't have sufficient, we didn't go over the number of places available. Can you let us know what the position is with co-opted members? How many vacancies do we have, clerk?
So we have 3 vacancies.
3 vacancies, thank you
Right.
very much.
Okay, so we have 3 vacancies, and co-option in this instance has to go through, applications have to go through the chair, is that correct?
Yes, applications for vacancies created following an election go through the chair. If the vacancy is created by a councillor resigning during the course of the year for whatever reason, that goes through the clerk. So that's why the applications will be sent to the chair in this instance. I think it might be useful because we have a resident sitting there who might be interested in having a glance at this, which will go on the notice boards in due course, like tomorrow morning. But that actually will be we all have a copy of that in our packs. Are we in agreement with, we've composed the notice following advice from One Voice Wales on the presentation of it. We've also included what is particular to our council, in that for any co-opted councillors coming on board, we provide a training will be provided, which is now required. A £150 councillor allowance will be made, and the provision will be made for an iPad as well. So that's been included in the advertisement. Can I confirm that the councillors present are happy with that format?
Yeah.
I'm happy with the format, Chair, but I'm not happy if the only advertising is to put it on the notice board. I think we've really got to make an effort to widen our channels of communication, and there are other ways of doing it than the notice board. And I'm sure you meant that in
No,
what you said.
I meant notice board because I was aware we had a resident living next to a notice
absolutely.
board.
But it should also go out, I would suggest, on our round robin.
Yes.
It should also go on the website. And I think that would be a very useful thing for us to do, because the closing date is in time for us to make the
9th, I think, isn't it?
co-options just ahead of the next meeting. isn't
Yes,
it?
it's at the bottom.
Yeah.
My copy has gone down now to
Yeah, 28th of May. is the
28th.
closing
Yes, we
date.
can make those co-options
Thank you.
before the
Thank you,
next
Chair.
meeting.
Yeah.
And it's also foreseen that we will have a Facebook page as well during that time, and it can go on Facebook too. Thank you very much for that. So I take it that's a general consensus that we were resolved on that
Yes.
decision.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we resolved on the wording.
So I'm now looking at the next item, which is to appoint members to the Finance Committee. We have a Finance Committee on this council, and the members of the Finance Committee are also signatories on the HSBC Bank and Monmouthshire Building Society as a normal format. Could I have some proposals for members on the Finance Committee? If it would help to say who was on the committee for the previous year, it was Councillor Farley, myself, Councillor Howells, and of the councillors who are here now, and the clerk.
I don't see that we can have an effective finance committee without continuing. It will need to be reinforced almost certainly. And certain decisions have to be made by the committee when it meets, such as who would be the chair. But I certainly would be willing to continue, and I think it would be difficult, frankly, colleagues, if we're not prepared to continue. It's also tied up with signatories for the bank account.
Yeah, true.
So thank you, Councillor. So you're prepared to continue. Can I just ask Councillor Howes, are you prepared to
Yes, I'm
continue?
prepared, yeah.
The clerk continues as a matter of course, as the RFO,
Yeah.
and I'm prepared to continue. So if I could have just a proposal and a seconder to that block of 3 councillors.
I'll propose
Thank
that.
you very much, Councillor Sundon, and seconded by, thank you, Councillor Farley.
Yes.
And the second stage to appoint signatories to HSBC Bank and Monmouthshire Building Society accounts. Are we happy that that will remain the same as the members on the committee?
Yes, I mean, for those who are not familiar with the Finance Committee, there are some finer points in the rubric that will have to be borne in mind. For example, one member needs to be someone who isn't a signatory. We need to get all that absolutely crystal clear when the committee meets, and it should meet soon in order to continue financial matters for the council. But what we're actually doing is sort of stocking the core of the committee. Obviously, the clerk has to be part of it, so does the chair. We have to build from that. And we can't really complete the building until we've completed the co-options. But we will have enough members to function as a finance committee if need be in the intervening month.
Thank you very much. So we've completed item 6. Item 7 is to receive the council's annual report, and the clerk is going to explain to us what the annual report now signifies.
Okay. So we've been advised that there are 2 new duties for councillors under the 2021 Local Government and Democracy Wales Act. An annual report will be required for the 2021 financial year and will be due for publication as soon as practical after 1st April 2022. These will be required annually thereafter. There's no template for a Community Council annual report, as the format will reflect what the council does. The level of detail is expected to reflect the size and scope of council activity. It's an opportunity to show the work of the council, reflecting on the past year's activity and to look ahead to its plans for the coming year. Councils may wish to consider the following information: organisation of the council, councillors, subcommittees and key contacts, basic financial information including income, running costs, money spent, the outcome of the audit, key council objectives for the year and progress against those objectives, and how the council engaged with the community, and its achievements, high points of the year, including outputs and outcomes of key services or activities delivered during the year. So that is the annual report. There's also a requirement that all councils will now have to write a training plan. Me that one.
Thank you. Thank you. That's the annual report. So in order to create a report, we actually have to go through what we have done in the preceding year, how we have spent money, various other items, as the clerk has already told us, the organisation of the council, what activities we've got, the high points of the year, the achievements, and we are also to reflect on what worked well and not so well. So that is something, I'm right in thinking that this needs to be provided by when?
Well, it says as soon as practical after April 2022,
Yes.
but obviously the council needs to take time
Yeah.
to...
Basically any time before next March. But I suspect we will want to do it quicker than that. But we're going to have to think quite hard about the best way to do it, and clearly can't be constructed and dictated now. My suggestion would be that a number of us work with the clerk to get a draft together. I think the importance of talking about it now is to make it clear that we understand the new duties that are laid upon us, and that we accept those, and that we will be working within those new duties. Just as, I might add, the other bit of the Act that is relevant to today particularly is the requirement about holding meetings. Legally, we have to provide meetings which people can access. They can either be entirely online, as we have been doing, or now that we're going back to being able to have face-to-face meetings, we're going to have the additional component of remote access. And remote access of 2 kinds. One for members of the public, and that's what, with James's help, we've been able to provide today. And whether or not it's being taken advantage of on this first occasion is beside the point. It's something that we have to be able to do, and we thought we should hit the ground running. The second part of that is going to have to be to enable councillor or councillors who are not able to attend a particular meeting, a council meeting that is, or who do not wish to attend in person on a particular occasion, they have to be given the means for participation in the meeting remotely, which is different from just being able to watch what happens. They will need to be able to interact with people in the room as near as possible as if they were in the room. We've got some of the technology for that, but not necessarily all fully worked out. But I think we have to declare our intention to do this. And it's an exciting opportunity and a good step forward for local democracy. But boy, does it place demands on small councils like us. And we should be aware of that. And I hope that our community will be sympathetic and understand, and that we don't get things like, oh, why are they buying a screen if that's what we did? Or why are they doing this? We do not set this particular rule. Where have I heard that before? But we have to follow it. And I think it's important that people understand that. And that's why I'm mentioning it now. So taken all together, the annual report, the requirement about meetings, and the greater transparency of training marks a significant change in the environment in which this council will operate, even compared with its immediate predecessor. Thank you, Chair. I didn't intend to give a lecture, but I thought it might be
Well, that was jolly interesting. Thank you very much.
appropriate at the time.
Thank you, Councillor Farley. This is actually being recorded, so we can play this back at our leisure to enjoy further. Thank you.
And I would imagine, dare I say, it's not a lot different at County Hall, is it, Councillor Webb?
Thank you very much. So, so you have information then to pass a minute on this,
Yes.
Clerk?
Yeah, so we resolved that we shall
Yes.
board, group and work on
Yes, yes, thank you. And this is going to need to be councillors who are already with us.
Yeah.
So any brand new councillors coming on board, we wouldn't expect to.
Well, they can hardly review last year.
Precisely. So item 8, this is to consider whether pay and conditions of service of the existing employee of the council, who is our clerk stroke responsible financial officer, whether pay and conditions of service shall be reviewed in line with the Independent Remuneration Panel of Wales review. This is a standard item somewhere in the year for the council to consider, and the normal recommendation is that we do indeed follow the Independent Remuneration Panel's review, but this is where we have to decide whether we shall or not formally. So could I ask if there is a nomination either to consider whether to continue the service with the Independent Remuneration Panel or not?
Chair, this is one of the what if not questions, isn't it? If we didn't do it as proposed, what might be the consequences? And there would be consequences for us and for our employee. And we would not, I think, as a council, want to be out of line with what's virtually an expectation that we do this. So I would propose that we certainly continue that practice and that we make sure that we are in line for the coming year.
Thank you. So that's a proposal made by Councillor Farley. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. Is there any other amendment to that proposal and seconding? No, thank you very much. So on that basis, we will continue to review in line with the Remuneration Panel of Wales. Thank you very much. Item 9, to note the decision of the Independent Remuneration Panel of Wales review that annual councillor payments of £150 are mandatory. Any member not wishing to receive this payment must notify the clerk in writing. Now, there is no suggestion that we wouldn't be interested in noting the decision. This councillor payment is mandatory, and it is to cover the costs and expenses of being a councillor. So this is something that is accepted as a mandatory payment The only way that this payment will not be made is if the member himself or herself chooses not to receive it. So it's not a council decision as to whether this amount is awarded. It's a decision on the individual councillor.
Indeed, Chair, if I could echo that, the amount is set. However, people can make two choices about it. One, to have it or not, and secondly, to look at it in light of their personal tax circumstances. After tax, it's not necessarily very much of the sum that is mentioned there that you actually receive. Some people might decide it's better not to have it for those reasons. Others might say, I make a voluntary contribution to the work of the community and therefore I don't want an allowance. But we have to note the decision, because at the end of the year we will be asked, each of us individually, whether we will take the payment or not. And we also need to have that flexibility, as it were, clearly in our minds when we answer any questions from potential co-opted members.
Thank you. So with regard to the actual agenda, the item is to note the decision of the independent remuneration panel. So it is a recording that we have noted it.
So
It's not a recording to be proposed or seconded.
It's duly noted. Yeah.
Thank you. And item 10 is to confirm the date of the next annual meeting, which, if according to our programme everything goes to plan, will be Tuesday the 14th of May 2023. 12 months to wait and build up steam for the next round of elections.
Well, we've done the minimum. Legally, we don't need to have any more meetings.
Okay, we go home
Well,
now.
Thank you so much. We couldn't run the council if we did.
With that
but
anarchic
legally-
point of view, I'm going to override you now, Councillor Farley, and take back control of this meeting, if you don't mind. Declare it closed, and with a small pause, move on to the next agenda. Thank you very much, all of you. And I'm closing this at 7:25, Clerk. Thank you very much. So, time to get our papers wrapped around something else now. Thanks, everyone. Are we behaving all right at the moment, James? I mean, really, you have overall control of us at the moment, and I'm quite happy about that, really. The moment that switch goes off, we all have to walk out because we haven't got a remote access point.
Sorry.
Everything all right, Councillor Webb? You've got everything in front
Just
of you
making
that you
sure
need?
all the papers are available.
Good, good. Could we just bring in the agenda that you've used, please, Tony, and the papers from the annual meeting? Thank you very much. You'd like to keep both of them, would you? All right, okay, that's fine. Yes. So, moving on to the agenda for our ordinary meeting. Sorry? Oh, the agenda for the ordinary meeting. Let's see if there's a spare here.
You're welcome. You have got space.
There's a spare. Thank you very much.
So,
Right,
is
everything all
anyone
right?
coming or going since the last one?
Well, you can see the room.
Yeah. Right.
So item 1 is to record attendance and accept apologies for absence as before. There are no changes here and no apologies presented for this particular meeting. Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest in items on the agenda.
Can I propose we declare as and when, Chair? We don't quite know how individual items will turn out, do we?
No, thank you very much, Councillor Farney. And item 3 is the public session, to which I should very much like to welcome Tony Newman, resident of this parish and a former councillor himself, with some experience of what we have to do and the responsibilities of it. Would you have anything to say, Tony?
That's what I'm here, Chairman, yes. I've got my very extensive notes here. To jog my memory.
For those who can't see the note, it's not an A4 piece of paper.
With all the years, and I don't mind about that, I'd completely forgotten that this was the annual meeting, which came before the meeting. I would have sat at home for another half an hour. It goes to show, doesn't it? You get out of practice.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I would like to raise, Chairman, is how the council does or doesn't go about its councillor business, bearing in mind this is a community council, and I do have experience of councillors of all sizes, from the Greater London Council to the London Borough of Greenwich and Tinton Community Council, all sorts of sizes of councils. It's about the way that the council go about their business. And in my view, councils such as you meet here, and this goes the same with the London boroughs, the smaller boroughs, when you break it all down, are very much local. Very much so. I know they deal with bigger issues, but they are very much local. And their major concern should be what happens in their own backyard. And I don't see this council doing very much about a number of things that happen in their backyard. You may be doing it, but if you do, I can say one or two things. It will either it's not having any effect if you're doing something about it because the same things are going on, or you don't know about it. And that's what I'm here to draw attention to. I'll give you an example. Are you aware of the problems being caused by people who park their cars on pavements, halfway on pavements? If you are aware of it, what are you doing about it? I can't find anywhere in any of the things that have been on the notice of that. The other one, which is a fairly obvious one, if the streets aren't swept and the cleaning isn't done properly, you know the county council are responsible for that. Why haven't we been onto the county council for that to happen? Now they're fairly obvious things. The next one is fairly obvious as well, and this is one that's really brought me around here tonight. For a considerable amount of time, the Pike Corner has been a disgrace, an absolute disgrace in every sense of the word. Since the electricity board, in fact before they did their work, it wasn't too clever, but since the electricity board had done their work, digging the hole of the verge up and badly replacing it, not the way it was, did nothing else to it. The pavement has been strewn with rubble, with litter and all sorts of other things. And it went on like that for week after week after week. No action. I asked why? What are the community council doing about it? If you say to me, well, we didn't know, then I would say to you, well, you ought to have done, because the duties of the community council is to know what's happening in the whole of their parish, wherever you are. You should know what's going on and what's not going on. So if it's not good enough to say you didn't know. If you did know, why wasn't something done about it? That's really a question, and I think this will go on to a debate. I could keep this debate going all night. I'm not going to. I'm saying what I'm saying.
No, you have about 10 minutes left.
Well,
Thank you.
I'm saying what I'm saying. I'm going home again. But this is the point I'm making. It is not obvious to me what this community council does in the village. I know you have your meetings every month. I read the notice that you put on the board every month. I see all the decisions that have been made. But what do you do in the village? And if you don't do things like making sure that every road in the village, at some stage or another, a councillor takes the trouble to walk around and see what the situation is, you will never know about the hedges that are overhanging the pavement and making people walk in the road to get out to them. You won't know about that unless you go and look for it. And the impression I get is that the council aren't out in their places they should be at the times that they should be. Now, Pike Corner has been, I walk past it every morning, and each time it grinds with me, and now something has been done about it. Not good enough, but something's been done about it. But I've had to do it. It's all been cleared now. In fact, it's been cleared 3 times, because the first time I wasn't satisfied with it, and I went back and complained again. I've used Anne a couple of times to help with getting the county council involved, but it's the contractors that are the problem. And eventually now, it's as good as it's going to get. It's not going to get any better than it is now, but at least you can walk around it. It looks a nice look. The same with the fountain and the seats across the fountain. They are now cleared. They've just been cleared, I don't know, in the last week or 10 days, I suppose. But prior to that, they've been an absolute disgrace. Now that area there, the fountain on one side, the Pike Cottage and the pavement on the other, which is well used, are the focal point of the village. There were a number of people that come and sit on those seats by the fountain there and look at the fountain, cars that stop there. That's the focal point of the village. And yet it's the most neglected part of the village that I know of. and I can walk all the way around the other roads and I can see things that I don't agree with, but not in the same way that that Pike Cottage corner. And I'll describe it as that because I don't know any other way of describing it, but you all know where I mean, don't you? Now it's all been cleared. It's been dug over 2 or 3 times now. It's still a mess. It's still a mess. But I don't think they're going to improve on that. But the pavement there hasn't been swept. The guttering on the outside of the traffic bollards, at the traffic management stuff there, is that's never. I don't remember that ever being swept, and that is now a foot out into the road and up to the curb in rubbish. By rubbish, of course, I mean natural rubbish. I'm not talking about newspapers and things like that. But it's the curb sort of. Why haven't the community council in, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years more done anything about that? Can I have an answer?
Thank you. So I'd like you to continue with whatever else you have to say, so we can look at, because I've been making notes as you've been talking.
I don't think I've missed anything off there. No, not missed anything off. Have I? What's on the bottom there?
No,
There's no minutes of these meetings posted on the notice board. Not that I'm aware. You put the notices up, you put the business meeting up, but I'm not aware of seeing any minutes. There's no minutes on there now for the last meeting.
Well, no, because the papers for this meeting came up. There isn't room for all of them, but they have been on display. They have been publicly available. I put them up on the notice board opposite you, as you well know.
I looked tonight and there are no minutes there. And there's no reason for it to come
no,
down.
Tony, let's just explain. When the minutes of this meeting, when the agenda for this meeting goes up, we take the minutes down. We have to put up 2 agendae for the meeting tonight, and we take down whatever minutes are there from the previous month.
Right.
But the minutes are put up within a week of the meeting happening, and within 3 working days of the next meeting. So they're actually on the board for nearly 3 weeks.
Why are they taken down?
Because there isn't any more room. We have to put the next minutes up after
Well,
this
that's right. When you
meeting.
put the next minutes up, then you take the old ones down.
Right, okay.
You leave the old ones there until then,
Okay.
I see. I hear what you're saying, but I'm just going to go through the points you've made. You've itemised parking of cars on pavements, street sweeping, Pike Corner, the rubbish and the contractors not moving that properly, hedges overhanging pavements, the condition of the fountain and the seats, and what you call the guttering, which I think, when you talk about the traffic bollards, are you talking about those arrowed, I don't know what they're called on the main road opposite the shop? Are you talking about those bollards in the middle of the A466?
No. Did I mention bollards?
You said guttering on traffic bollards.
Yeah.
What was that?
Guttering on traffic bollards?
Well, that's no. Just rephrase it then. That's what I heard. It was the very last point you made, and I'm just wanting some clarification. You said that.
That's what I said to you, and I need clarification because I don't know what that refers.
I could only think
meant-
you might have been talking about those in the road bollards that have weeds and things around them.
No. The islands you mean in the road?
Not the irons. No. The actual.
The keep left sign.
Yes.
Yeah. The
Yes.
islands. Yeah. Keep
Okay.
left islands. No, I know. I wasn't referring. I mean, they're all part of
Okay,
the
so the
general
guttering
master,
on the
not
traffic
not
bollards.
especially those. No.
Well, if you do think of what it is, please, you've got my number. Please come back to me on this.
No, I don't know.
Now, I've looked down the list here, and there is information we can give you that we are certainly, and councillors and I have been out regarding parking of cars on pavements, and in fact, on one occasion we've actually involved the local PCSO to look at this problem. So, parking of cars on pavements, we're not there on a 24-hour basis to see when someone's done that. But certainly, if there is a continuing problem, that is something please bring to our attention, as I know you have done before, and we will deal with it. Because you're quite right, that is not a legal process.
Can I suggest that you put a fairly prominent notice? We've got 3 notice boards now, I think, in the village, haven't we? On there, reminding people.
Well, watch this space because we have other notice and signage coming up as well that you will find interesting. As far as the hedges overhanging pavements, I know that a great deal has been done already to ensure that those hedges are actually cut, and you know that I've been involved in this. Are there any specific areas that you would like to bring to our attention?
No.
Well, when there are specific areas, please bring them forward.
Well,
We'll only be too happy to help.
It's not my job to walk around the village inspecting all the roads and things for hedges and so on. I expect the councillors to be doing this.
Yes. And
If you're not doing it, get
we
paid
take your
something else.
point. We take your point, and I think that's not unreasonable. And I'd be very happy to have discussions with you and perhaps walk around with you to give a set route, if you like, to have a look at some of the things, just to advise. And your advice would be really useful, Tony.
Mhm.
So please, if you will offer that, we'd be most grateful. Thank you. And when it comes to the fountain and seats, ironically, I've actually been there several times myself, and I think even the pointing of the slabs, the stones underneath the fountain, etc., do need some proper attention. And we'll be looking at that as part of our remit within the next few weeks to see what can be done to improve that area, including the possible pollarding of the tree, which is the source of a lot of the vegetation that actually comes down in that particular area as well.
Well, it should have been pollarded 2 years ago.
Yes.
It's going to be
Well-
a very expensive job now.
Well,
to do it.
whatever happens, we will look now at getting that done and keeping that as part of an ongoing process.
You see, the fountain belongs to the county council, not the community council.
Oh,
I will, no, I'm sorry, I can't, just a moment, Tony. For the purpose of this meeting, you have made a statement that it belongs to the county council. This is not something that we can discuss at this
No,
point in the public
okay.
meeting.
I'm making the point that,
You've made your point.
and if there's any complaints about the fountain, then you make it to the county council, which is what I've done.
You have made the point
And
that
as
you
far as
wish
I'm
to
aware,
make.
The county council have reacted. to
You have
it.
made the point you wish to make. I'm not verifying its accuracy for the purpose of this part of the meeting.
Well, I don't care about what you verify, Chairman. I'm making
I
the
do.
point, I'm making the point that.
I do, on behalf of the council.
I complained to the
Fine,
county council.
thank you.
The county council have done something about it.
Fine, this is not part of a debate.
However,
Debating is not part of this.
What concerns me is that the council don't appear to know about these things. And this is the point I'm making. You can tell me now that you've arranged to do this, you've arranged to do that, but it's been like it for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. It's been like it.
What I would like to do,
The water's been coming out of the fountain, leaking away, which is one of the reasons I went to the county council about it, because that is a problem. If you're losing water, we're all short of water now, we don't want to waste it, and it's been leaking out and leaking across the pavement for I don't know how long. The county council job, and they have to complain.
thank you very much. Now, we are up to time on the public session, but I would like to conclude it by saying that with great pleasure, I will bring you the report for 2022/23, which we have to compile as councillors to show you the areas where we really have made achievements. And we will also include areas where we could have done better. And I'd more than happily share that with you so you can see what we have been doing rather than what you feel we haven't. And I'd like on that note to be very positive. Thank you very much for attending. And I'm going to close this part of the meeting.
Thank you for your
Thank you
time,
so
Chairman.
much. Thank you. Now, where are we on the agenda?
Minutes of the ordinary meeting.
Item 4, which is
Receive and approve the minutes of the
Thank
ordinary
you.
meeting.
to receive and approve the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on the 12th of April. Goodbye, Tony. Goodbye. We have the minutes of that meeting, and they've all been circulated in your pack. I'm going to have a quick look through them if you'd like to follow. No public session attendance for that meeting. We approved.
I think we should approve them, Chair. We've
Yes.
had them long enough. We've seen them in various
That's fine,
draft
good.
forms.
So you've had the opportunity to
Yes.
take that up. May I have a proposer, please?
Yeah.
And a seconder, please, and a show of hands for unanimous. Thank you very much. We don't do matters arising, but there is a matter there that I will bring to attention as we move down our agenda. And we are now moving on to item 5, which is to receive reports. We've had a report which the clerk will relay from PCSO Andy Jones.
Okay, and PCSO reported that on the 23rd of April, there was a single vehicle road traffic accident between St Arvans and Devorden. Vehicle ended up on its side. Elderly driver and passenger were taken to hospital with injuries not thought to be life-threatening. Devorden Road was shut while the incident was dealt with. Another RTC was near Chepstow by the Spa shop. A cyclist was knocked off a bicycle by a vehicle and sustained minor injuries. The car driver was reported for document offence.
Thank you very much. Item B, the One Voice Wales Monmouthshire Committee was attended by Councillor Farley on the 21st of April. If you have a synopsis of that, we'd be grateful, Peter.
Very little to report, actually, Chair. The meeting was not phenomenally well attended. There was a very much an autumnal, almost end of term feeling about it. Considerable anger on the part of one or two councillors who were leaving their posts and felt that in various ways their work had been frustrated, either in terms of handing over to a new council or in terms of getting certain things that they'd been trying to do recognised over a period of time. So I would, and your own report, Chair, from the AONB didn't come to the meeting, although I know that you had sent it and said so. The other thing that we should say is that the person isn't exactly clerking the meeting, but the One Voice Wales
Development
person,
Officer.
the development officer running the meeting, was doing this for the first time. I actually thought it was a pretty poor show that she had been left entirely on her own with unfamiliar technology and hardly knowing anybody in the meeting, as would her predecessor. Nevertheless, she did a good job. So my suggestion is that we wait now for things to get back into gear again as the new councils come on stream. Was a curious meeting.
The speaker?
I did, however, well, the speakers should have involved the police, but it didn't work out. We were supposed to have a police live commentary on a streamed thing about one of their crime prevention initiatives. That just didn't work out and was in effect abandoned. But the documentation was circulated, and I did send it round to members previously. My recommendation would be that we look at that and consider inviting somebody from that particular team to come and talk to us, because it is very much about rural crime and measure, and particularly security marking of property. So there's some useful stuff there, which out of the relative shambles of the meeting, we could benefit from. The other contribution to the meeting was from the Police and Crime Commissioner, who again was in an impossible position. The police technology doesn't allow interaction with the platform that was being used for the meeting. So he had to talk to us by telephone, couldn't show any graphics or anything like that. It was frankly not very satisfactory. Finally, just for information really, I did manage to take an opportunity to raise my perennial issue with One Voice Wales. And that is, with the growing demands on community councils, the growing likelihood that responsibilities increase and problems might arise, my question has been for some time, where do individual councillors go for support? And it's not enough to say, oh, well, there's somebody in the next council who might know a thing or two. And I'm going to give an example, and it's a hypothetical example, I emphasise. If, as a councillor, I had a problem with our clerk of the day, which led to all sorts of disputes and personnel type activity of a hostile kind, the clerk would be able to get support from a union and be represented. As a councillor on the other side of the table on the same issue, whether the complaint was against me or by me, I have nowhere to go. If I was a county councillor, as I once was, I would be able to go through my political group, through the WLGA, to an association to get support. And I could do the same if I was an independent, because for county council purposes, independents are treated as a group and have the same protection and support. But there is nothing for community councillors, and I think that's a great shame. I mentioned it again. I don't think One Voice Wales will pick it up because they didn't before. but I remain in vague hope. Two final things from this meeting. Can I continue? It might be helpful to colleagues. General dissatisfaction with the Starleaf platform that was the vehicle of choice for remote meetings originally. General dissatisfaction and hints that One Voice Wales themselves are moving away from it. Not sure to what yet, probably Zoom. We might want to note that, even though we don't ourselves still use Starleaf. And maybe some rumblings of questions about the follow-up by One Voice Wales on some of the issues raised in committees like that one. And a feeling that maybe they need to get a bit clearer when they make a response or when they are asked to do something, that they report back. So there might be a bit of a change to the format of the meetings. As always, great to hear and see fellow councillors. But as I think I said at the very beginning, it was a curious meeting, and I hope that things will pick up as the new councils come on stream.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farley. I will say, having been the One Voice Wales representative for this council for, I think, over 5 years now, I'm very aware of how wide an umbrella One Voice Wales is. Consider it covers 435 community councils and town councils, and there is a huge expectation that they will cover everything within a very limited budget. What's the subscription we pay for that?
It's very reasonable,
It's,
isn't it?
it's
But
based on the number.
185, 183.
No.
I mentioned
Sorry,
something.
Councillor.
I would say my 5 pence, bearing in mind that I've been clerk for a number of years, a long time. But I always found
Clerk or councillor?
clerk, I'm
Right,
talking about now,
right.
I'm going my clerking days. But I found that Society of Local Council Clerks were exceptional for helping and assisting clerks. Absolutely exceptional. In my day, I'm not sure if it's the case now, and also One Voice Wales, who had their legal department for councillors, who I would immediately refer them to One Voice Wales. If they're not being able to work as they should be, because they should be acting for you, they should have a legal department who should be able to help you if you need it. Their fees obviously aren't sufficient to be able to cover that. I think about £100 a year, aren't they? I think I know.
Yeah,
Well, it
something
depends
like
on
that.
it depends on the
it's-
number of residences in your.
Yeah. But I mean, you have got to have somebody
Well,
that can support you
I think
in
that
a case of difficulty, which I had as clerk. I had to advise councillors to
that's helpful.
where to go. Okay, they have you have the monitoring officer at County Hall, but he has limited time also. You can refer members to the monitoring officer at County Hall, but it's not they don't necessarily have to work for you.
No,
It's a difficult one, but there should be somebody
it is a
there.
difficult one. My understanding is that the current line from One Voice Wales is that they are there to support the councils corporately, but not individual councillors. And I'm thinking of individual, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
Actually,
And I
we
would
can
urge
pursue this.
Mary to really keep in contact with the Society of Local Council Clerks, because they were it's a very lonely job being clerk. And they were my backbone, and they were at the end. If I knew I had a council meeting, they'd be very difficult. Not like this council, of course, but I would be on the phone in the afternoon, and I'd get a good result. I'd know how to deal with that problem. You know, they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Well, I'm going to say something. I've listened to the two comments you've both made, and when I attended a cluster meeting of community councils set up by the chair of Trellick United Council to talk about the boundary changes affecting how we divide up the money that we've got left in our kitty if some of our people are going to another council or whatever, and to trying to do. And you were there that evening, Anne. And Richard John was there, who was, until the election, the leader of Monmouthshire County Council. And when we asked questions, we were told to go to One Voice Wales and get the answers. Now, quite frankly, if Monmouthshire County Council don't understand that they too have a responsibility and they need to be looking at funding as well to ameliorate the use of their monitoring officer, who clearly has no time for community councils as a whole or even individual councillors, the funding has to come from the core authority as well. It is impossible to simply impose that on community councils and expect them to pay more to One Voice Wales. There has to be a joint approach on this, and I really hope that you will actually take that
I will.
forward,
I will.
because I think Monmouthshire County Council need to be aware
Particularly at
of
the
what they
moment.
can get out of One Voice Wales
Okay.
instead of telling us to go there.
Thank you.
Chair, can I conclude my report by saying that when the minutes for the meeting that I'm talking about are available, we will circulate them.
Could I see them as well?
I don't think they
That'd be
are
okay.
available at the moment.
Well, the clerk will make those
The clerk will
arrangements. You
certainly
can put
call
that
you.
on there.
Well, they would be probably included with our stuff. Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Right.
Fine, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Farley. Now we're going to move on to item 6, Personnel Committee, and I'm going to take great delight in echoing what Peter's about to say on item A regarding the election of our MCC councillor. Over to you, please, Peter.
Thank you very much, Chair. Well, as the, I suppose strictly speaking, former chair of the Personnel Committee in the last council, it does mystify me slightly as to why this comes under personnel items, but it's as good a place as any to congratulate you, Anne, on being returned as our county councillor. I know it was a tough election.
Thank you.
There is a part of me looking at the election overall that is actually delighted by the outcome, but I am personally delighted that you have been returned and that we'll still be working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farley. And item B, we've got an extra piece on here, which is a continuation of this document that was brought up in the annual meeting, which referred to the new duties for councils, as well as the annual reports. You will see on the bottom of that document, it looks like this, Barry. It was with your annual meeting papers, Peter.
Yes.
Yeah.
There we are. All councils will now have to write a training plan, and that is going to involve making arrangements to ensure that we have sufficient skills and understanding. They're talking about basic induction for councillors, the code of conduct, which has always been a mandatory thing. We've all been through that, and financial management and guidance. It is really important that this training really is consolidated, and we actually have to have the plan up and running by the 5th of November, which sounds a long time away, but you know, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, August out, we're talking about 4 months. It's the kind of thing, if we don't kick it into action now, we'll be running around in September dealing with a budget that we have to set and a training plan we have to set. So it's a bit like going to the dentist, really. Let's get that over, and then we can go to the fun fair afterwards. Sort that out.
What's that to do with the dentist?
Well, I have to think of some fun whenever I go.
I think this is important. We're relatively new to the business of having a personnel committee. I can't think where else this can come, what other committee this could come under. So there are a number of things we need to keep in mind. One, we do need to continue to have a personnel committee, and that will have to be equipped with members. And at the same time as that, we probably already have some information about what training has been previously done, particularly by the existing members. Whether we could access that, do us a sort of an audit, would be very helpful.
I will say that actually training in the past, Councillor Farley, has been very scarce. Some more training was done during COVID because we were able to do it remotely, which meant we didn't have to, go to Caldecott or Usk or Portskewett or Raglan or wherever to do face-to-face training. So we did very little during COVID, and it was very, very scarce before that, beyond the mandatory code of conduct. And it's clear that that's not really sufficient. This is what Welsh Government is saying. This isn't sufficient. We need to be helped to create a better trained group of councillors, and maybe the train that One Voice Wales needs to be modified so that it's broken into sections that we can easily deal with. I think some of the conversation needs to be had with One Voice Wales about what it does on this.
Absolutely. So I think we're absolutely right to mention this now, but it is going to be another block of work.
Could I also say, just going back on that, when it comes to what they talk about the financial training, I'm not convinced that the financial training is solely best served by One Voice Wales. I think if we all sit down with a good bookkeeper or retired accountant who can actually show how things are set out and what we need to look at, that could be a very useful training session, and we could do that locally probably. I'm thinking of somebody in our locality, Councillor Howells, who might be
I
prepared
think
to
we should investigate
do
that.
that. Thank you very much. Anything more on Personnel Committee from anyone?
Any question? I haven't got anything else to say, but if there are any questions.
None. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Farley. Going on to item 7, which is the Finance Committee. There are several of us sort of in it now because that was appointed in the annual meeting. Are you happy to continue with this, taking this line, Councillor Farley?
Yes, what, to go through this
Yes.
part of the, yes. I think we should take as read the information about balances and about payments made. Those have
And you're
been
comfortable with that?
well
Clerk
circulated
RFO,
unless
yeah.
the RFO has any issues to raise
No.
with us.
All fine.
We're then asked under C of that item 220507 to note income received since the last meeting. That was the first of the 3 tranches of our precept money from the County Council, and County Council are good at getting that out to us. I have to say, a very good service there. As far as D is concerned, item D, any potential transfer of financial assets as a result of local government boundary changes which were effective from the 5th of May. There are some implications of the transfer, but they're not particularly major, are they? They're about a piece of street furniture, the business of the notice board.
That's further on the agenda.
Which is further
this
on.
This is actually a financial asset.
And I don't think I'm not aware of any particular. There are 1 or 2 responsibilities we'll be undertaking, but they're not financial assets. Is that right?
If I could just bring to the meeting's attention that at the end of March we were left with a balance prior to the new precept for this new year coming into the account. That balance is made up of the precepts of previous years based on the number of residents in our community council in those previous years. What has changed since the 5th of May is that we have lost some of those residents whose contribution made up what's in our bank account, what's in our reserve, because they have now moved to another council. And I have actually had some telephone calls from other chairs of community councils in the last 2 or 3 weeks saying, do you know what we're supposed to do with regard to whether the residents that we have lost because they've moved to another council, whether they actually take that little pot into the new council with them, because it's part of the assets in this council, and it is not an unrealistic thing, especially with some of the councils, with the number of changes they've made. And equally, we have residents who've come into our council who will have money sitting in their former community council account, which could well bear. And there does actually have to be some advice from Audit Wales on how these financial transactions are to be looked at. What is very significant, and this is extremely important, is that any ring-fenced amounts within the old community council of up to the 31st of March 2022 must be allowed to stay with that community council, because they're ring-fenced for a particular purpose. So, and this does need to be considered very carefully. It's not just saying, right, if you've got 15,000 in the pot at the end of the 31st of March, then you say, right, divide that by 600 residents, work out then what it is per resident, multiply by the 30, for instance, who've gone to Devorden Council, and you send that money to Devorden, because whatever is ring-fenced has to come out of that equation first. And the only thing that we could do is to put this on our agenda now, because we were one of the first meetings to be held post-election, to make sure that we actually start writing to the Monmouthshire County Council first, because they should be providing advice too. It isn't just left to Audit Wales, and you wonder who's speaking to each other. We're at the bottom of the pile. You've got Welsh Government, Audit Wales, Unitary Authority, us. Why are we having to ask about this when the advice has not been forthcoming by any of those higher agencies? May I suggest the way forward on this is that our clerk RFO writes to our monitoring officer and chief executive in MCC, and to One Voice Wales, Audit Wales, and if necessary, we'll have a word with the senators too. Because to leave people in this dangling position is ridiculous.
I have to say I'm gobsmacked that this could even be, the question could even be asked. Knock for knock. I can understand property. I can understand how, you know, a building or whatever, but to start carving up monies that have been previously paid and have benefited people while they were in that community, and then they can take some with them. It's very strange.
Well, you could argue excuse me interrupting, but you could argue that what's left in reserves is money that hasn't been spent, that was allocated per head, because that's how the precept is calculated per head. And you know, you have an entire village along the Wye Valley that has left one council and gone into another new one. All I'm saying is that whatever the process is needs to be applied or applicable to every council according to its state, so that there's a set pattern that is actually legal and viable.
I have no problem with that at all.
I think you should write to Peter Davis as well. I'm Monmouthshire. Don't you?
Yeah. I mean,
Who's Peter Davis? For our clerk and RFO and myself?
He's the, what, head of resources is he called now?
Yeah. He would be the best.
Is he the gentleman who works out our rateable value? Is that the Peter I speak to quite regularly?
I don't know that would be him, but it would be under his command, wouldn't it?
But he would be the best person to actually start the
That's
ball
our first
rolling
point of
as
call,
was,
is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. And what is his title then?
Head of resources, I imagine, or yes. I'll email you his title, okay?
Right.
Please, yeah.
Right. Now, what I prefer is that this is actually going from our community council with our council representation in one block, so that we're all on the same hymn sheet and the hymn sheet is there in front of us. So I think it's really important, Councillor Webb, that whatever discussions and questions are raised, please copy us in on anything you're raising, but better still, keep us informed as to what you're raising with other officers, so that it's pointless us all going over each other's territory without a more unified approach. And from this council on, I really hope the approach will be united from our elected representative and us together, please.
Could we just reflect for one moment, for the benefit of people who haven't really thought too much about it, including me? This potentially applies to boundary changes between St Arvans and Devorden.
For us.
For us.
Yeah.
Between St Arvans and Chepstow.
In terms of residents.
Yes. The boundary change brought residents in from Chepstow to here.
Yeah.
The boundary change is taking people out from here. Possibly, I don't. That's the point. The potential is for Chepstow to be one of the councils involved. Obviously, we are at the pivot of it. Tinton, we already know they've got their own transitional issues. Now, you cover Tinton as well, don't you? Do you?
Yes.
So,
and Andover.
Are they concerned about it as well?
I haven't.
They haven't met yet, I suppose.
No, they haven't met yet.
She says.
I mean, obviously have been discussed in the past, the conundrum of it, the whole thing, you know, but I don't know if it's been resolved.
There've been lots of discussions in the past.
Okay.
You know, I've had a flake of telephone calls, as I've said, in the last 3 weeks from people I've met on One Voice Wales in other councils near Abergavenny, Caldecott, simply asking, do you know anything? Because you're on the One Voice Wales Monmouthshire Newport committee. Do you know anything? But One Voice Wales can only go so far. And at the end of the road, this is a problem with finance within our council. our council area.
And it wasn't mentioned at the Monmouthshire and Newport area meeting in this context.
No, no.
Only in terms of assets.
Well, with your permission, if the clerk and I manage to see fit to compose a letter that we could send to the 3 councils who will actually affect our boundary, we could actually make a start on asking them what do they think the arrangements should or could be. But I'm really disappointed that there isn't a leadership on this. Why are little community councils having to scrape around trying to find out what to do?
Well, the same new regulations that we talked about earlier also enable us to form groups of neighbouring community councils to work together on a bigger footprint if we wish. And that might well be a spur for that. It's the sort of thing that would emerge in a cluster meeting if they were still going, and maybe the sort of thing Lower Wye Area Committee if it continues.
It's the unintended consequence of the whole thing.
Absolutely.
But actually, it's lack of forethought of the whole thing. Everyone knew that there was going to be a financial cut-off somewhere.
Yeah.
Boundary Commission changes started coming in 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I will move on because I'm talking far too much as chair. But I think that this has happened. But would you be agreeable to us making some informal contact with our neighbouring Wye Valley councils and possibly having a cluster meeting to discuss this?
Fully endorse that.
Super, thank you very much.
And certainly that letter needs to be drafted at this stage and can be at this stage
Yes,
to set the draft.
lovely.
But Chairman, besides, excuse me, but as well as you having this meeting, you need somebody at the head of that, like Peter Davis or One Voice Wales, whoever.
We need somebody who's going to make a
Not
difference,
just a
Anne.
trustee,
No,
you need
no.
somebody with the
But we
commitment
need somebody who's
to
actually going to
realise.
act,
Yeah.
not simply take the message away and
Absolutely.
distill it, well, not even distill it, dilute it
Sorry,
further.
yeah.
Thank you.
The final item under finance, which started all of this, who would have thought that the finance report could be so exciting and touch on the prospect for almost civil disobedience? E. Oh no, we're not going to be allowed to do that now, are we?
No.
E. To remove any invalid bank signatories as requested by Monmouthshire Building Society. We've got to look at the whole business of signatories. We've touched on that already, I think.
Yes, but there are 2 signatories on the bank account which are no longer valid, and they cannot take them off the account unless we put a minute to say the signatories are for K. Horton and M. Davis.
Then I would move that they be removed.
Thank you.
And a minute
Proposal
made
here.
to
Thank
say
you.
that.
And seconder, Mike, and all in agreement? Thank you very much.
Yes, that still stands. Have we done it the other way? Have we made the right resolutions to make sure that Mary, if as appropriate,
Well, ironically,
is identified?
in the 2022/23 year, Mary was put on the Monmouthshire Building Society account, obviously as well as the HSBC, as a signatory. So, and you as a signatory, myself and Councillor Howells are all signatories from the old year. So in fact, there are no more new ones to go on, but there are these 2 invalid ones to withdraw.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. And there's just a short item to note under F, and that is that thanks have been received from St Arvans PCC for the Section 137 grant for the churchyard maintenance. It was a little late coming, but they'd like to include that. So, is that all right on finance for you, Councillor Farming?
I've said more than enough, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to the assets register. Item 8, King George's Field Playground. And the first point, Clerk, you dealt with this.
Oh yes, we did indeed. We've put in an application to Chepstow and Caldicott Lions for funds towards replacing the play train. We have asked for, well, we've asked for basically we've said that we've stated that it's going to cost about 12,500 to replace the train, and we would be grateful for any contribution which they might considered making towards it.
Yeah, we already have some money toward it.
Yes, we've already got £900 on the You
So the
Decide funds.
12,500 comes down to 11,600. So it's
So-
anything that they might provide out of 11,600. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Clerk. Item 2, to note recent repairs in the playground and the zip wire, yes. And WNG attended very promptly as well. So I think we've got a good relationship going there to continue with. And item 3 is to look at the draft of mandatory signage. This is, do you remember we had a signer during COVID of all the do's and don'ts? So this is to replace what was on the gate, which, and Gordon, the inspectors from Gordon, what was the lady's name? Mike, what was the lady's name? Not Lisa.
It's gone. Yeah. Yeah. Sarah.
The inspector. In any case, she sent all the things we had to have in law.
Yeah.
So by law, have you got your copy as well, mate? By law, we had to have the name of the site. We've got our logo. We have to have the address of the site. We had to have an emergency number. Now Nick Bell has very kindly jigged this up for us. So out of all the bits that the inspector gave us, he's created this sort of template. It can be repositioned, but these are the things we need on it. An emergency number, if it's an emergency, there's only one number, and that is 999. But we also need to, if there are problems, so he's put it down as, tell us if you spot a problem, and put the Welsh equivalent in. This is all bilingual, with the telephone number of the clerk and the email of the clerk. So that's issues about the age range of children going in there. Was that you're only permitted in there if you're over 8 years of age on your own, but under 8, he's translated as under 8, bring a grown up. It's a different concept from adults must accompany a child under the age of 8. He's changed it round, which I think is much more playground friendly. And then the admonition: let's keep this player safe and clean for everyone. And you've got the litter bin sign. We've always had a policy of no bicycles, no dogs apart from assistants, and no wine, alcohol is in there. And actually, if we could just pass this, you might be interested in having a look at this as well, James.
The name of the field.
Sorry?
The name of the field on there.
Yeah,
You've got it there, King
Not
George.
King George's field, is it?
Yeah.
George V.
It's called King George's Field.
Yes.
Yes. I thought James just might have a look at that.
Are there
Go past
any
it.
more fashionable items that we need to prohibit? There would have been a time when we would have been leaping up and down to say no skateboarding.
True.
We may now be wanting to leap up and down to say no scooters. I don't know. I'm
Well,
just.
is that perhaps covered by bicycles? I don't know.
Well,
So
I
that's,
don't know. It was seeing the bicycle
Yes. What we can
that
do,
made me think.
what we can do on these signs, if we left a decent amount of space, equivalent perhaps to one of these circles, for instance, that was space somewhere, you can actually get a very, very strong plastic sticker to go in there. So if there were another thing that had to be moved, banned, you could make a red circle and put whatever's banned in it, but you'd have some blank space here so you could attach it to the existing site.
I think that might well be sensible, and it may not be long before we're thinking of banning drones.
No. Yeah.
The list goes on and on, but I'm not trying to be flippant about this, but we need to show some kind of warning.
There's one thing on there that should be on there that isn't, and it is a legal requirement to have a no smoking sign.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Have that on there as well.
Yeah. I'm not too sure. Can you see where we've got the hammer and the saw? I think that was a little. I mean, these were only ideas that
They play
Nick put
hammer and
in.
sickle.
The idea was, because of course Nick is local and he knows that we've had bits of wood drop off. So tell us if you spot a problem. Might almost encourage people to take their hammers and saws in there. I'm just wondering if we actually need that diagram or not. It may confuse more than it actually helps.
Yes, would agree.
But if you're happy, we can rejig this, put the no smoking sign in,
Yeah.
and also jig it so proportionately it's the size of the gate,
Yes.
so it's nice and clear. So this is really just format one to give us, so we've got time to think about this and see if there's anything else that I mean people on these little, what do they call these scooters that older people
Mobility
drive around,
scooters.
mobility scooters. Well, there could be a lot of people going in for
Well, they're
chat.
disabled.
But you can't ban those.
No.
Difficult that.
no.
That is difficult. The other point you make is very relevant because there's new legislation out on drones, and indeed it might be incumbent upon ourselves to mention that at some stage in an appropriate time and place, because there have been some rumblings on Facebook already about drones and guidance, which there are two parts of legislation to that: privacy laws, harassment and nuisance, and in fact trespass. So they're going through with us all at the moment. But yeah, interesting that. And
I think this is
photography of
sorry.
sorry, I beg your pardon, Pete. Children as well. So that might well come in on on a playground. So yeah, we need to look at that at some stage.
I'd just like to support the idea that some of these might be addable as stickers. We've been talking about something like this for quite some time. I don't want a member of the community who came earlier to come back and remind us of yet something else. And the sooner we can get this done, the better. At the moment, the playground is almost devoid of notices. Whether they are there to be legally required or just to be helpful, there certainly aren't as many as there have been in the past, and we need to do something about it.
Well, the idea of this attached to the gate at the point of entry means that everyone can read it. And if you can imagine, this is fairly readable as it is. You can imagine that covering most of that gate space. It will be very, very clear. No one can miss any of these points then. In what will be on that gate.
That's good.
And let's keep that moving.
So how is this going to be taken forward, Chair?
Can I suggest that if in principle we are comfortable with the content of this, if we're happy to say add no smoking and leave a space for any extra signage, could I suggest we go back to Nick Bell and ask him to rejig it to the proportions of the gate, so it can be blown up to that particular space, and that we allocate tonight a sum of money that up to a certain amount for printing a sign. Yes. And I would say I would imagine we must be looking at about £100 for a steel sign, maybe 150.
Yeah. I think that's entirely reasonable. I've no idea how realistic a price that is, mind you, but we should allocate some money.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we'll end up discussing this in June, then taking it back for a bit more modification.
And it's going to be laminated.
Yes.
And that could be plus or minus £50, couldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the end of
Trying
the
to
day.
avoid. So I would say we should allocate some money. You mentioned £150, if that seems reasonable.
If we say up to, then anything underneath that.
Yes. Yeah.
And we do know some very good signage people which are coming up in the later on.
Content's very good, actually.
It is good.
I like this. Tell us if you spot a problem.
Yeah.
In particular.
And I've looked at some signage.
Positioning is odd, but
It wasn't Lisa. What was her name? Oh, it'll come to me. Emergency number. He said there is only one. If there's an emergency, you do not depend on another councillor or whatever to tend to it, who may not even be near a phone.
exactly.
So it's simples. Thank you very much. Shall we move on
Do we
then?
need a
Oh, by the
proposal
way,
for the sum of
sorry.
Oh,
money
yes.
or what?
Proposed, sorry.
Sorry,
you did-
one more item. I propose about the money in a moment.
Mm.
I take it the Welsh is okay, because I have no way of knowing whether this is right.
That's a good point. We'll check the Welsh translation against. There is somebody in the village who's a native Welsh speaker.
Yeah.
Is it Aylwyn? She walks her dog.
Yeah, she's a dog walker.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a couple of them around.
Yes.
Dennis will know as well.
Excellent. Could we pass that task to you? Thank you, Councillor Howells.
So do you need a proposal
Could
on
we
the
have a
money?
proposal on the
Yeah.
money? Thank you.
I'd like to make that proposal that we allocate up to £150
Seconded by Councillor Sunderland
for the preparation of a notice.
and resolved unanimously. Thank you very much, Councillor Howells. Good. So let's move now on to the Park Sports Field. We've received, and that's in the package, the risk assessment and event management plan from the Memorial Hall Management Committee for the Jubilee Big Picnic event. They did send an email of thank you for the grant of £250 and informed us that the socket unit was fitted in the middle of April. And we now have the paper copy of the risk assessment and what they've done regarding our concerns about the electrical supply and the PAT testing. According to this, the gate is not going to be open because into the sports field. Parking will be, because this is largely a village event, so the parking will be in the car park of the Memorial Hall. No food or refreshments will be served, so people are bringing their own. The toilet facilities will be via the Memorial Hall, and Chepstow Male Voice Choir coming along, and entertainment by a local band. And they've been to Protec for the necessary installations. I'm looking at you, Councillor Sunderland, because I know that you've been particularly involved with this. In fact, you know, to a huge extent, the amount of time you've given out on that. If we look at the actual risk assessment, there is even a first aider on site. It came under whether visitors may suffer heat exhaustion. First aider on site. I would imagine that the first aider will be able to deal with other things other than heat exhaustion, which is, you know, again, it's to be commended, because that is, you know, community events, and you know, somebody could slip, do all sorts of things. Stings and bites is the first aider on site. Crowds, large space chosen for the venue. And it does actually say committee members on site to limit numbers should this be necessary. And they've actually discovered that they actually had to apply for temporary events notice, even though there's no alcohol involved.
Yeah.
But that is needed for the performances and other aspects. So they have actually got the temporary events notice. I think it might be quite useful if we perhaps asked if we could just have a copy of the temporary events notice, just to put in our file.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that's not going to be an imposition at all.
No, it's
So
a
that
good
would be a request to Judith.
I mean, you are supposed to on the event, you are supposed to pin it up on the notice board. Well, quite where they'll find a notice board in the middle of a field, I don't know. But I think it would be useful that we actually have that to accompany our
I'm
our
surprised
file.
they've had to have one, actually, to be honest.
It's the entertainment.
Is it?
Mm.
Yeah, the old
Right.
Performing Rights Society thing
Good.
as well.
Well, I think this is a distinct improvement from the situation that I thought we were going to be in not that long ago.
I think as an adjunct to this, I
agree.
think it'd be prudent for us to remove the rugby posts before that event. Get them taken out and the sockets filled temporarily, because children do tend to swing on these things if they're bored witless, and they get used as a focal point around the. I think because we are going to take them down anyway.
Yeah.
To have them refurbed, I think it'd be prudent to do it before this event.
Yeah.
But the important thing here is the sockets in the ground, that the sockets are covered to the correct level.
Right.
We don't want a foot falling down into a hole, basically.
Right. So we need to find. But how are rugby posts normally They're lifted up out of the ground, presumably.
I don't know what sockets they've got in the moment, but we used to have them socketed at school. So we would just drop them in and then locked in. But I suspect these have been dug in and a bit of concrete put around them, I suspect. Something like that.
So how
But
would would we have to actually dig down to get the concrete out?
I don't know. We'd have to go and have a look. Obviously, I've never been to inspect them other than to see if they were
Okay.
solid or not. But I think we've said we're going to do it anyway. But
Yeah.
if we could bring that date forward, I think that would be a prudent move
Yeah.
for us.
So
We don't
site
want 2 or
visit.
3 kids on hanging on those.
Yeah, we've only got about 3 weeks to get this done in.
I know, but you know, this has been on
Okay.
the agenda for some time.
Yeah. Site visit. Thank you very much, Councillor Sunderland. Are we happy that everything that we've discussed so far now covers what
I
we
think
were
so.
looking at this?
I think so.
And I think it would be appropriate to put in our minutes that the committee is to be commended for its appropriate risk assessments. Or is that too high? After all the aggro that we had, I just felt that maybe.
Yeah. Where are we with this now? They've done this,
in response to our request.
right, and that's
to provide
good.
it.
But we're not necessarily competent beyond receiving it. If it doesn't work, or if it's wrong, or things still go wrong, on whose head is it about the, in other words, who's to judge the quality of the assessment? It looks pretty good to me, but I don't know.
Well, and unless we actually have an inspector patrolling on the day to say whether it's come up to the mark or beforehand, we rely on the veracity of a qualified group of charity trustees, having read our health and safety inspection report and providing a risk assessment to suit what the report asked of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done that, and I'm happy, and I'm pleased that they've done that, and I welcome that. But you know, you could go on and on and round and round, but no, I think we welcome it, and all the usual sorts of say some nice things about it, and I was interested to see how they've handled the electrical supply in the end.
Well, we've been diligent, haven't we, in saying that we need this report from them, this risk assessment. It should dovetail with the report that we had from our people, and provided it works within those parameters, I think that's as much as we can be expected to do, because they are running the event.
Exactly.
But I take your point, who adjudicates whether that's good enough or not, and that's difficult. Protec will have their own insurances about what they've put in, but what we can't control is the behaviour of the people using the gear, and that needs policing by some agency.
Exactly.
Well, this is where committee members come
And
in.
they've taken a lot on us to the committee, and that's fine. And that's good.
Well, they have included the important things were under power supply by Protec to current regulations.
Yeah.
And equipment pack tested.
Yeah, that's what we requested.
So if any equipment isn't pack tested and it falls foul of any event on that field, anything that happens in there, that is their responsibility.
Yeah, under their insurance, and they'll have to do that for their own.
Yes, exactly. So I think we've gone as far as we reasonably can. We've asked for this; it's been done, and we appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Item C, to note the transfer. This is now assets from St Arvans Community Council to Devorden, because we don't have any that affect Tinton or Chepstow. These Clark are
A defibrillator and a notice board.
the defibrillator that's in Howick, and the old notice board, which will be coming out of the Laurel Park turn as well. So at the moment, we're just noting that if we feel there is any financial value that needs to be extended or to be asked, Devorden need to be asked to pay for the cabinet that St Arvans owned, again, we'll have to look at what happens when we discuss all the other financial transfers as well. I mean, usually, if you're doing something like that in in farming, and you go into a farm where the tenant before you has put up lots of buildings. You take to those buildings less whatever percentage there is for each year of the building's life. So we might say, right, we've had the defibrillator for 5 years. It actually has a shelf life of 40 years. So we need some money back for that.
When the county councils, i.e. the Gwents and all of those, and there were 5 county councils in Wales? When they were abolished as a result of some government move or other, in order to handle this kind of matter, they actually had to set up a new body called the Residuary Body for Wales. It had its offices in Llanishen. I know that because the organisation I worked for had offices in the same building. And they were there for several years, just to take an optimistic view of this sort of thing. There needs to be a local equivalent.
Thank you very much, Councillor Farley. So if you're happy that we've completed the assets register, including property, let's move on to planning, shall we? We've got some progress on St Arvans Lodge, which Mary can tell us about.
Progress. The MCC Heritage Officer, A. Longford, has noted that the current proposals fail to preserve the character of the conservation area, and further discussions with the applicant are proposed.
So the application as it is invalid.
Yeah.
But at least, I think it's important MCC have, sounded the note for further discussions.
Good.
Keep going. Item 2 on Livox Quarry.
Again, we've not, SACC has not yet made a formal response to the suggested PAG meeting, which is...
Yeah, what is interesting, if you look on the website, there are hundreds of objections. There are some letters of support.
366 items last time I checked.
And a huge number. No, I can't say. No, it's not right for me to say hundreds of objections. There are several objections. There are several more support letters from people all around the country. Wigan, Humberside.
Obviously, very much affected by the development.
Indeed. But what is important, and I would like to share with you, I think we have got comments from AONB, the Pathways Officer, and various other local bodies, and they actually all present quite an interesting viewpoint, which I think would be worth us looking at in a PAG meeting.
Yeah.
Because as yet we have not made a formal response. Tinton early on said they supported the application but gave no reasons for supporting it. It was just a one-liner, and you can find that online. I suggest that our response does need to be a bit more thought through, so that we are aware of some of the strengths and the weaknesses of the proposal, and that those ideas are taken into account further along the line. So shall we leave that with the clerk to get us together for a PAG meeting?
Yes. Please.
PAG being
Planning Advisory Group.
no, that's fine. Have we listed that in any recent documentation about what actual? We need to look at the whole question of advisory groups for the new council,
Yes.
don't we?
I mean, suggestion the clerk will be that to suggest a planning advisory group meeting, not a PAG, so that nobody gets confused by what it means.
Good.
And then item C, St Arvans House, Devorden Road, and those lovely conifers. There's still no decision has been made on this by MCC, which I find quite strange. And one tree already came down in Devorden Road very recently. So if another one comes down, it'd be nice to think that there'd be a quicker response to a resident wanting to make sure that nothing affects the residents driving up and down the road. We may actually write back to that, Mary, and just say, look, is there much more? Maybe we've missed something, but it's definitely not on the website.
No, we did check, didn't we, this morning?
So moving on from planning,
Yeah.
and we're into communications now. Item A, to receive a report from How Do Digital regarding progress with the SACC website. Dave Griffiths had a conversation with me about a fortnight ago, and he said that his company, How Do Digital, need to know what we want on our web pages in order for him to progress it with his contractor. So basically, as a council, we need to be quite specific about what we want on those web pages, which would mean looking at our old website, presumably, or looking at other people's websites.
This is another one that goes on. I almost think we should cut our losses and start again. But nevertheless, it needs, I suppose we need the communications group to get together very, very quickly to progress this.
Yes.
Or have you got something you can
I think it
circulate?
really needs to be full council on this, which will be us in any case.
Yes,
Until
yes.
I think what you said, cut our losses and start again. Maybe we may be better off saying, can we pay you for what you've done so far, whatever it is, and actually go into a proper a relationship with another company, because How Do Digital is a very small band, and Dave Griffiths is working away quite a lot now on a new contract. So, to put extra pressure on to get a job done quickly, we may be better off saying, shall we call it quits? And, follow the suggestion you made, Peter.
Well, I looked at our website in the context of the notice for the meetings tonight, and the likelihood that we would need to be advertising the co-option vacancies that we discussed earlier. Apart from the notice of the open day a few weeks ago, which is still the front page, there's nothing on our website, and certainly no documents which we are supposed to make public, no agendas and no minutes later than summer of last year. Now, I don't think that is anywhere near good enough. And it's something that we have to, you're quite right, we have to look at this in two ways. One, how do we handle the current impasse? And secondly, what are we going to need to do about the website in the future? And I have made several comments in emails to the clerk, and I wasn't clear in my emails, clerk, and I hope you didn't take it this way. I was not being critical of you at all.
No, I fully understand
and I don't think you did take it that way. But we've got to do something, and there are other sources of advice available to us, which we could perhaps consult.
Following on from points made earlier, I think we should go and have something with lots of bullet points on page 1 for each month that we publish this, and put the formalised minutes and the agendas, do that as well. But we'll have bullet points saying, we've done this, we've done that,
yes.
we've done that.
And talk it
Any
up.
comments, please contact
Yes,
us immediately.
yes,
A little bit like the signs.
A bit like a pin board.
Literally get it out there and say, this is what we're doing, everybody. If you've got concerns or very happy with what we're doing, please tell us. Any concerns, things not going fast enough, etc., etc. Let's get them an opportunity to speak. But we need to advertise ourselves out, really, and push ourselves out. We are doing this for you, we're doing that for you. Because that will stop the sort of comments we've had today. Because it is being used, Facebook is being used as this platform at the moment. And some of the undercurrents are very uncomfortable indeed. So we need to stop people's first choice of communication being Facebook, and have that site available to them and say, well, come on, if you've got something to say, say it. And this is what we have done in the last month or two. Run something like that, maybe?
A few years ago, I can't remember which it was now. I've worked for so many organisations that start things and don't finish. But one of them had something called a mud board, and I think it was called a mud board, and you could sling your mud on it, and everybody understood what it was there for. But it was exactly the same thing. It's a way of raising an issue. Now, of course, we live in less polite times now. That's a problem.
I know, Yeah.
But anyway, we need to work on this. So I definitely think I would support you, Chair. In the name of looking at communications, we need a quick virtual meeting of councillors. I think we should be looking to find other external support to help us shape our ideas. We're probably going to have to look for another contractor.
Well, the contractor we looked at two. One was the contractor at Coent, and the other was ICT Vision. And I'm wondering that
Vision ICT.
Vision ICT, sorry.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if we gave some of ideas to Vision ICT the way you would an architect and said, right, if we had a contract with you, what would you do to have the mud board or pin board or whatever? They come up with a few pages, and then we say, will we like the look of it or not? And if we don't like the look of it, we go elsewhere.
I think we should decide what we want first and then look at how we get it.
Mm,
Oh, yeah.
mm,
Because as I say, there are sources of help that we could draw on, but, and you've mentioned two of them, but there are others.
absolutely.
Okay.
Right. We've got we're probably going to end up with a planning session and a communication session
Yeah.
together, so we can thrash
So-
all this out.
So if we do subscribe to Zoom, that could go on for 30 hours. It would be,
Oh,
there would be
fine.
no limit to the number of,
I'll order a
hours we
curry
could
and
spend on
a
it.
crate of beer.
now,
Fine.
now.
Good idea. Yeah. Counselling. We need some counselling.
Should we move on? Should we move on from our website? Because I get depressed every time I do this point. Item B, to note the round robin communication, which actually this is much more fulsome, which we're issuing via MailChimp. Mary's put there, we only had one so far this month for the 5th of May, about the an hour and 11 bank holiday clinics, but they are very important.
Yeah.
But better than that is, I've actually had comments from residents to say how much they like the clear format of the MailChimp page.
Oh, thank you.
It's got SACC at the top, it's got the information underneath. They grab it and
done.
read it and then close it, and it's done.
Oh.
It's far better, they said, than sitting down reading an email.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. I'm glad about that.
I think Mary's done a great job
Absolutely.
Yeah, just get those things
getting
out.
this up and running.
Yeah.
And
No, I'm really pleased about that. The comments. Yeah, that's great.
Good.
Websites.
And so moving on very quickly, just another little add-on. We have talked about Facebook before. Mary has done some research on Facebook. If we set up a Facebook page that doesn't go public, but that we can discuss at our next group meeting together, we could actually get ourselves up and running with a very limited Facebook page for the community council. And look
Can
at
I
that.
just raise a point that concerns me about Facebook? I think Mike touched on it as well. You do seem to get an awful lot of negativity on a Facebook page, whether a website is seen as more formal.
But if you look at the Facebook, you looked at other councils.
Yeah.
There was one that was very, very, very quite rigidly constructed, and you weren't able to send nasty messages on it.
Yes,
Yeah,
well,
the-
there is that. It's got to be careful.
You're
with
always
it,
going to get
yeah.
people putting bad messages out there. The trick is to head them off at the gulch by giving you retaliation before they get a chance to even,
Yeah.
get that bullet point. This week we've done this before they even talk about it.
Yeah.
That's the only way
to take all
forward.
this into that meeting that you've talked
Yeah.
about.
Yes.
I think that's right.
Good. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
so- Right,
And-
so we'll plan this meeting and I'll circulate the order.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
okay.
you. And then item 11, we're moving on to highways and maintenance. I'm sorry this is toward the end of the meeting, because it is actually, this item one is one of the most important things. But James Checker is actually sending a list of all the things he can continue to do with us and the cost of it,
Right.
which includes meeting with residents. Can I suggest that we actually do have a really good powwow and bring that into our
Yes.
next
Yes,
session
yes,
together
yeah.
as well,
Yes.
and push that on? Sorry, that was for what did I do that for? Yes,
Item 1.
and you've got copious pages there that tell you about our offer to fund a speed indicator, a SID,
Yeah.
and that couldn't be done before the end of last year. More information needed to be gleaned from tubes, etc. But actually, this is carrying on for far too long.
saying that they're going to provide the machine for it. Whereas you said
Yes,
provide it anyway.
yes.
They-
Oh,
yeah.
Considering we were told that they had no money for it,
Yeah.
if they're now saying they've got it, let's find out when they've got it. Phaedra sent the message across, which said that it's actually we're intending to procure and install the 2 new SIDs on the A466, which are the replacement,
Yeah.
in the early period of the next upcoming financial year. And I'm saying it loudly so we're all realise we are now in the early period of the next upcoming financial year.
Yeah.
And the MCC budget for the old year has already been committed and it hasn't been done. Right. With regards to the possibility, so this is now early, we're in early. With regards to the possibility of another new SID unit, we shall have to analyse speed data in order to assess if there's evidence of excessive, inappropriate average vehicular speed here. Now, I'm not sure, Anne, Councillor Webb, what we were doing in the last 18 months, having those sessions and those meetings in Upper Divorton Road. But when we talk about they need this evidence in order to warrant the allocation of funds in next year's, which is what we're in now, budget, to such another procurement, we are offering to buy the device. So at this moment in time, we are unable to advise if this request can or cannot be supported. However, we shall add your council's request for a SIDS unit to our list of requests for the upcoming financial year. And this is from Phaedra.
A relatively
Yes.
junior person, I would have thought.
But she will have been told what to write. I can't
give up on the
imagine.
whole thing. I'm as fed up as you are because I've been going on about it at the same time as you. A strong letter to Paul Keeble, a really strong letter to Paul Keeble. Why has he handed over to Phaedra? Why has he done that? It was his responsibility. Paul Keeble's.
And what's his response?
Beg pardon?
What's his response?
Paul Keeble's.
You
wrote
sent a strong letter to him, or you?
I have, and I've spoken to him. I've sent numerous emails.
Yes.
And you know, every time it's been raised. I'm just as frustrated as you are about it.
But can I just ask then, what was his response?
Well, I have to get my emails back up again, but I think it was basically a holding thing again.
Please do
Yeah.
share it with us,
Yeah,
Anne.
I will.
At the end of the road, if we're working
I-
together,
it was quite a while ago now. I imagine it was probably 2 months ago now. But it's just ridiculous, and particularly as you're prepared to pay for the blooming thing, you know.
well, I think there's going to be publicity on this.
You can do exactly that, but you can either copy it to I don't know who's going to be the cabinet member now for highways, but that's beside the point. But yeah.
And is Mark Hand aware of what that Paul Keeble is causing this frustration
I'm
for
not
you?
sure if Mark has been involved at all in this. I'm not sure.
He is head of highways.
Oh yes, he is, but I'm not sure if
And
Right.
he's been
many
had
other
any
things.
communications regarding that.
Can I report a conversation I had with Paul only last week on election day?
Yes.
Because he happened to
Oh, yes,
be
he was, yes.
one of the polling
Riding up
station staff, and we had a bit of a chat. Yeah, I'm always pleased to see him. And he me. I think. Anyway, somehow or other, the conversation got round to cycling. Now he is an avid cyclist.
Absolutely.
I said, of course, we're on a national cycle route on Divorton Road, Paul.
Yeah.
I said, and bikes come down there sometimes 50 miles an hour or more. Do they? He said.
Oh.
Do they? I said, yes. And they're quiet. And sometimes, and it's scary as a pedestrian. If you're an old person like me, it's not. Oh, he said. So I said, why don't you come and talk to us? Oh, I will, he said.
Oh. Right.
Well,
next
I leave
meeting.
you with that.
Well,
They
I
did
will
some
volunteer a table
this year as
and
well, didn't they?
flasks, and we can all meet at my garage again, like we did before, on site for him to witness what's going on. And the best time for him to come over is to take some time off at a weekend and join us on a Sunday morning when 150 bikes go flying by at 40, 50 miles
So I
an
think
hour.
we should make
One
that
day it's going to land
invitation.
on somebody's pocket.
But just a moment.
Exactly.
Can we just go back on this? Let's just go back. This is not new territory at all. When we started these Upper Devon Road meetings, and for the purposes of anyone sitting in this room as an observer, some will know where we're talking about, and others may not. But we're talking about the top of Upper Devon Road, where there are garages for parking on the right-hand side of the cottages on the opposite side. We have held 3 site meetings in Mike Sunderland's garage. Roger Hoggins, who was in charge of highways until he moved to a different department, but who was very sympathetic to the 25 years plus that St Arvans Council has been trying to get some traffic calming methods. He attended. Graham Kinsella didn't, and we asked them to attend at 8:30, 8:15, so they could actually see the traffic going up and down. Anne came to one of the meetings. Paul Keeble was invited to. He didn't even send an apology.
No.
Now, I'm quite sure, the veracity of your conversation about cycling with him when you happen to be in the polling station or whatever, I'm sure is very encouraging. But it does nothing for what has already been out there for the last 18 months. I am suggesting that we go to County Hall. They clearly cannot come out to meet us. So let's, what's about the Mountain of Mohammed? Let's do it the other way. And in fact, it worked very well when we were looking at a planning problem, and we went there years ago, and we met with the 2 planning officers, and we had a lot of joy because we were actually on their home turf. I'm actually thinking, Mike, if you would like to try a County Hall visit before another lovely coffee and cookie session in your garage, I would be delighted to
I'll be
form
there, funnily
that.
enough. I think Mr. Costello, my next door neighbour, would like to come along.
Indeed,
You've received a letter
indeed.
from Ian.
And I'm
Because
sorry,
he's
Anne. Is
advised
there any
me.
reason this kind of meeting
Yeah.
can't be held?
But hardly anybody can work in County Hall anyway. I have to say that.
Well,
Can we go to his home then?
He must go to
Okay.
places.
Okay, calm down. We're going to
No,
sort this out.
it's not calm down. And this has been going on for so long.
I think we should just wait
I'm pleased to hear what you
a
said.
few days.
Yeah,
And I think we
We'll have
should
a new
seek a
cabinet
meeting
highways
with whoever the cabinet member
absolutely.
is.
Yeah, well, that would be a very interesting thing to do. And considering we've had a really nasty
Just
crash
how
up there yet
effective is
again.
that? I know you're an existing councillor and you're a past county councillor. The cabinet member will need to get up to speed. The cabinet member relies on the staff telling him or her what's going on.
I know all this.
Yes, but quite frankly, what can the cabinet member do then? We have to eyeball the very people who are advising him or her.
Well, invite him to the community council.
Yeah.
He said he'd come.
Yeah.
Peter.
He actually said he'd come to a
Yeah, he
community
did.
council
Well, he
meeting.
did say he would.
He's never sent an apology for the ones we invited him to
I'm-
before.
That's the best thing to do. Invite him to the next community
Take
council.
take him at his word. Or none of the things that we're talking about are mutually exclusive, are they?
No.
He made that offer informally. We should write to him now.
Yeah.
And if we don't, I will. Whoever does it,
Well, it needs to go from the clerk,
yes, we make sure we know how to,
and it will
Yeah,
have
but if
reference
you-
to Councillor Farley's.
reference a helpful conversation on whenever it was. We'd like to take you up on your offer to come and visit.
Will you draft that up and forward it to me? We
Well,
get
we'll
this
work
moving?
something out between
Yeah.
us, certainly.
And I will send you the copy of the last.
Yeah.
email.
And that's great.
Because
Thank
even
you.
I
The
know that
last-
this has been going on forever.
The last copy of the last email.
The
Well,
last
yes.
email about how
Yeah, it's only 1958,
what-
so there's time yet.
Would it help when you are
Don't rush.
sending an email to someone like Paul that you actually include our clerk on it so they
Well,
know
you
that we're
asked me to do
reading
and
it?
I did it, so therefore
Yes,
you know that
but
I
you
did
can
it.
copy us as well.
Oh,
Nothing
I
like
will.
that.
I will.
Good.
I jolly well will.
Good. Thank you very much, Anne,
That is
because
AD,
you've jolly well asked to.
Right.
We've got.
How would you like me to minute all
Yes,
this?
I'm sorry. No, what I'm trying to say is we've gone round this so often, and we have invited him to attend,
Yeah.
and we haven't even had a reply.
Yeah, well, I'm not Paul Keeble, I'm sorry, but I've done the best that I can
Yeah.
in this case.
I can see that.
I am sorry.
But I think
have.
copying us in on
And
emails
yet
would
I
be
don't
an added
expect to be
thing.
spoken to
No, I'm sorry.
in that
If
manner,
if you feel that was
because
rather
I'm
abrupt,
doing my best, as Peter knows, it sometimes is quite difficult I am only 1 of 46 now. Okay.
I apologise if I was rather abrupt, but it still doesn't take away from the way that communications just seem to flitter around without us actually knowing at ground level what's going on. And we keep waiting for this kind of thing. And Mike has spent a huge amount of time and work on this, as Barry has as well, over many years.
Likewise.
Right,
Yeah,
let's move on. Let's
The
move
point
on
I'd
if you're
just add
happy,
to
Mike.
that is nobody other than myself actually lives on that hill.
I appreciate that.
It's going to
But
kill
funny
somebody,
enough,
that.
when it's going
on top of
round, I didn't have one comment about it. It's really
know.
strange. Really strange. And I realise I obviously some of that
Well,
was
no,
very, very
because the
often.
people who are involved with that hill is about 15 people.
I really yeah.
I think that's Anyway, good. Well, we'll do that.
can we
Mary,
move on,
you and
please?
I'll not
Yes.
turning up.
We're moving on to item 3, the update. You've had a copy of the new signage, although it bears Tinton's name. And that's because that is going to be the size of, I'm looking for mine now, Mary. It was, isn't it? Wasn't it? Right, so it's going to be, so St. Arvans or Llanarvan will be that size here. And we'll have our particular logo and our particular fountain impression at the bottom. So those have now been officially approved, and we've asked for 3 signs, which is both sides of the A466 and the top of Devorden Road. So it's all 3 entries in and out of St. Arvans.
Do we know anything about the size of these?
Large,
As big as possible.
but something like 4 foot wide. Yeah.
With white posts,
Yeah.
large white posts to hold them up.
Yeah, it's good.
We'll look
Good,
into that.
yeah.
That's lovely.
Size of rugby pin.
Like a rugby post.
Yeah.
We've got.
And can we just move on to item 4, which is to note the parking concerns. This is a note on Grange Road. Residents are very concerned about the parking on pavements. And there's also a damaged grit bin, which we'll write to Highways about.
I've done that.
Sorry?
I did that about a month ago.
To?
I was, and I had a response back on that.
Yeah. So could you share the response with the clerk then, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure you got it. Okay.
I'm not sure much jurisdiction we as a community council have got over people parking on pavements. Quite We haven't frankly. got any. Exactly.
No.
So the point that was made earlier
Yeah.
and to do with parking is a really difficult one because we actually need the local constabulary involved with this.
But one thing we
shout-outs
did
on
at the last meeting was to look at the
Yeah.
parking
Yeah.
signage that our councillor Clay at the last meeting set up,
That's right.
which we agreed. And we've actually got, where are the copies of that signage now, Mary?
that was
We've
good.
got some loose ones and we have some,
And interestingly, we need some more road markings, don't we, to signify where people can park in the first place. Because if we look outside Squirrel
Right.
Cottages, we've got people who are breaking the law every day by parking there.
On the white, on the yellow lines.
Well, there are no yellow lines by Squirrel Cottages, are there?
Well, sorry, what about the slow signs?
no, that they're not legal, no parking.
They're not.
They're just
No,
informing you to,
Even though they are yellow lines.
yes, no. They're not legal, legal tender,
The signs at the cottage is opposite Peter Squirrel Cottages, isn't it?
yeah.
Okay.
The lower side of that, looking towards the fountain, there should be highways putting in double yellow lines so that there is no parking allowed for I think it's 38 feet there because it obscures people's view of going down to the And the problem we've got there, of course, is that any car comes out of what is that called, Church Lane, has got to go out across onto the other carriageway to see around the corner. Now I know that's going to upset a few people who live there, but nevertheless it's against the law.
Can I
And
just
that's a
say,
problem.
I sorry to interrupt you, Mike, but we are just within our jurisdiction on time for this meeting.
okay.
So we're looking at, Councillor Clay and I, before the election, did talk to the residents opposite the playground.
Yeah.
And they're very agreeable to having, please respect our residents, do not park here, and permission on their walls. So it's a very soft but effective touch, hopefully, that will shame to a certain extent.
Yeah.
And if not, then we move further. And item 5 is the quotation for the order of signage. And we now have 2 quotations. One from, so these are for A4 signs from Sovereign Print for £13 plus VAT. Pomegranate A4 signs £8.90 plus VAT. And then for A3 signage, Sovereign Print are offering £17 as opposed to Pomegranate at £16. So there's a £1 differential between the A3, and there's over £4 differential in A4. And the idea was to look at ordering 10 of the A4 signs for parking and 10 A3 signs for litter, as I recall Councillor Clay bringing to the last meeting. Do you have are there any fingers? Right, we'll check the order, but I suppose in principle we need to know which company we'll go to for the signage and agree that, please, tonight.
I don't know either of the companies. Are there any grounds for thinking that the cheaper company would not do a good job?
They're well known in near Abergavenny as a signage company. They work in the Lanover unit there. And they've been there for some time. We could ask for a couple of samples, see what it's like before putting in the full order.
I've heard of them before. They were mentioned early on, weren't they?
Yes.
As potential.
It was the first quotation, but we needed to find somebody else. So we found somebody who was a bit cheaper on the A3 signs. But I have to admit, £8.90 is for an aluminium sign. I asked Honeycomb printers in Abergavenny, who do they actually did the printing for the elections as well as our Five Ways magazine, and they do some aluminium work, and they couldn't compete with it.
I think this is a splendid idea, and it's unfortunate that it's got caught up in the transition from one council to another. So the sooner we can get on with this, the better. We should be supporting it. So it sounds to me, in the absence of any other comments so far, that there is no reason not to go with the pomegranate quote. Is that right?
I certainly, as chair, I don't want to influence anyone, but as a councillor, I'd be very happy with that.
Yes, and from the original investigations, they were interested. They were obviously.
And better still, we have residents who would like this type of signage.
Yeah.
And
Do
they've
we
given their
put forward a
permission.
preferred site for these?
I think when when we've got them, we go along with
Yes,
it.
if the residents give permission for it to go on the outside of their property, because we're not putting it on the highway, it'd be just the same as a resident saying, don't, I'll shoot you if you park in front of my drive gate.
This has actually come up in the context of parking, but of course the actual project as a whole, quite rightly, also embraced the other topic of littering, and they're not necessarily signs going in the same places. Some will be without the other, others will be, partners for life, as it were, on the same wall. But I think we should get on with this. What do we need to do now to make this happen? Approve the expenditure?
We have to.
And when we are actually the finance committee as well as the council, so we can't waste another meeting to make a recommendation to ourselves. We should.
We put on the agenda to select a quotation.
Then I would vote that we suggest that we select the pomegranate quotation, and we action this as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
And that we find a way of thanking our former colleague for his excellent work on this. Indeed. And hope that it's a good omen for the future.
So proposer. Proposer.
Yes, we will.
Seconder. We'll deal with that if you don't mind.
I think that's a separate thing, really.
That's our decision.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Right. Fine. So, show of hands. Thank you very much. We can move on with that. And quickly on to Environment and Recreation to receive monthly report on the defibrillators. Councillor Howell.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nearly done.
Did something I said.
And then there were 5.
Okay, well, you've got your 3 pieces of A4 you're going to read now.
Oh.
Right, report on monthly, just the monthly report on defibrillators, please, Councillor Howell.
No problem with the defib, except for weighted pads and
Yeah.
batteries.
Yeah.
Have they not arrived?
we had a query on the order.
Okay.
And there's a little part B to note delivery and storage of the Jubilee bench. It is now in the county. It is getting closer. So that's come under there.
So what's the timetable now? It's obviously in secure storage, or will be.
It is in secure
It
storage.
is, but it needs to be there, preferably in time for the actual Jubilee. Can we
Yes.
do that?
I think we can.
The other one is singing in the rest.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it sounds to me as though Her Majesty is as well. So the
Yeah.
sooner we get this done, the better.
Very quickly indeed.
Obviously for
Lovely.
It's a terrible thing to say, London Bridge.
Thank you.
Oh, for those with
Yeah.
mobility problems.
Yes. Item 13, correspondence. This is a very important piece of correspondence because we're responding to the letter from Chepstow Town Council and their request for support for the minor injuries unit to be returned to Chepstow Hospital. And that when you look at the data they've got, it's really quite alarming that all these departments have been removed.
Yeah.
We need to say whether we're going to support that or not, and I don't think that's going to be a problem to support.
Absolutely.
But we need to put something out to the residents to show.
Our support.
I think we need to ask Chepstow what can we send out to residents, which will show what they can do to send their protest.
Have they sent these letters?
Well, you've got the copies. You've got the copies that have been sent on the 5th of May to Eluned Morgan, the Senedd Health Minister, and you've got the data to Judith Paget on the 5th of May as well.
Judith
those-
Paget is actually the director of NHS Wales, not just the chief exec, or maybe not even now the chief executive of Iron Bevan, but the contents are pretty good. We should support it. I was looking back through my old campaign leaflets for the 2012 election. Bring back the minor injuries unit, I said. We have a petition from Chepstow of several thousand people, I said. Let's support it. We had the chair of the health authority at the time visit. Oh, didn't realise. This is where Chepstow is. You're a bit at the end of the line, aren't you? This is an absolute scandal, and we should support it in the strongest possible terms.
So many scandals indeed. Right. Well, I think what we need to find, we cannot send the letters that we've had out on
No.
round robin. It has to be in an easy to read and an easy form of supporting that the any resident who gets the round robin says, right, I'm going to send an email or a letter to
Well,
so
can
and
I
so.
make a suggestion? It may be too late this evening to go into the implications of it. I think we should use round robin more, as you know. I think we should use round robin as a newsletter, and we should, just as we produce minutes from our meetings fairly quickly, what we could do after a meeting, such as this one, is to produce a small number of key points. Council discussed this, action being taken is. And in the case of this one, Council discussed letter from Chepstow Town Council to the Minister for Health and the Chief Executive of NHS Wales, which we fully support. Residents wishing to support the case for reinstating the minor injuries unit can do this, that, or the other, and detailed figures are available on request.
It certainly gets things moving quickly, and we do have it.
You better write it down, please.
This is not a tool that we've used the round robin for. We tend to use it to circulate stuff of general interest, not necessarily generated here. But I'm just making an off-the-cuff suggestion. We have a potentially very useful tool here, which we could make more of. I know it means more work after a meeting, but we're only talking 3 or 4, news from. Anyway, just a thought.
But we still need to contact Chepstow and actually find out who and how residents need to contact.
Yeah, well, we
to
can do
support
that straight
this.
away. The mayor's gone now, no longer a councillor there. But, it's worth going back to the clerk, go back to Lucy and say, how can we take this forward with you?
Good.
Excellent.
Is there, we don't do any other business, but is there anything else on that now that needs to, we've, item 14, dates of forthcoming meetings. Well, it doesn't look as though we've got any forthcoming meetings requiring representation.
Well,
But-
we do actually, don't we?
Yes.
Because we've got the village trust, next village trust meeting. We've had notice of that, haven't we? It's July sometime.
Memorial Hall, you mean?
And the Memorial Hall.
Oh, that you've
Both.
popped that out.
Both. Well, the Memorial Hall has been circulated, looking for somebody to go and represent us. We need to think about representation on the village trust, which
Yes,
is
and we
the
need
meeting rooms,
advice.
which is more than just being somebody turning up at a meeting. We've really got to, in my view, change the relationship that we have with that group in terms of the role that we play on it. So these are things to mention.
Yeah.
The minutes wouldn't need to say any more than upcoming meetings include Memorial Hall and the meeting rooms.
Well,
And the village.
And of course,
these are
the-
meetings requiring SACC
Yes.
representation. Memorial Hall does not require us to represent.
Isn't it?
No, they don't have a place for us.
No, they can't require us, but I personally would take the word, would interpret the word very elastically. They jolly well should have somebody there.
Well, everyone, you can all go as residents. And I think at that meeting, there could be an opportunity for someone to say, well, I'd like to join the committee if you wanted to, or could the committee, or we could write to them now and say, at the AGM, could we suggest a representative from the community council attends as an observer, or really not in a punitive way to sort of see what they're doing, but to see what opportunity there is to engage together more fully.
Something like that would be good.
So we could ask the clerk to send that to the a
Well,
letter
it'd
to
be
that
something we
effect.
want to be hard for them to decline.
Peace is breaking out.
Yes, straight by the iron salt.
Sorry, I misunderstood the significance of the words requiring representation.
But I mean, there is Give Dog Found the Red Card coming up, and there will be another One Voice Wales coming up in the
God
next
help
3
us.
months.
Do
But
we need to know the dates? Do we know the dates?
no, when we do know the dates, but Clark and I will get those together for the next agenda. I think that's more than enough to keep us going. So I'd like to formally close the meeting at 9:15, which actually isn't totally over our hours because we had an annual meeting booked in as well. I would like to thank absolutely everybody for being here. The councillors here, Clark here, everybody working so well together, and James and Peter for putting together
Yes.
this wonderful
You've
Yes,
gone
yes,
above and beyond the
presentation.
call of duty, mate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is a chargeable feast. And contentment and communication.